They said no one survives on that ridge after dusk. They said the wind alone could tear a man apart. But none of that explained what the SEALs felt that night. When the first shot cracked through the dark, clean, controlled, and too precise to be luck, they didn't know her name yet. They didn't know she was even on the mountain. All they knew was this. Someone out there, someone unseen, had just saved them from dying in the next 10 seconds. Like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more stories. The camera would open on a barren stretch of razor terrain, a ridge of black shale glowing faintly under a dying moon. Wind whistles through narrow gullies like a haunted choir, and there, barely visible, the silhouettes of a 4-man SEAL recon team pinned down behind a jagged cluster of boulders. Their radios hiss with static, their breath fogs in the cold, and tension-thick metallic suffocating clings to every movement they make. They had no idea the enemy had been tracking them for 2 hours. No idea that a 10-man insurgent element had maneuvered onto the high ground above them, and certainly no idea that hiding 35 meters back, half buried under a camouflage veil of dust-colored netting, a lone woman watched everything through the matte black scope of a suppressed rifle. But her story didn't start on that ridge. It started long before back, when she was simply known as Sergeant Leela Carson, a quiet logistics NCO who carried clipboards, not rifles. She walked through bases unnoticed, always the one with an extra wrench, an extra patch kit, an extra pair of hands, but never the one anyone imagined with a sniper rifle to most men on deployment. She blended into the background of beige tents and diesel fumes. Yet even then, something in her eyes set her apart, something distant, a private war she never spoke about. But tonight was different. Her breathing is slow, unnaturally slow. She watches the SEALs pinned on the rocks below, counting enemy muzzle flashes like a conductor reading music. The wind gusts hard 22 knots coming from the northwest. She adjusts without hesitation. She had done this 1,000 times in training, and hundreds of times before that, alone on forgotten fields no one want to remember. She exhales. The camera would track the bullet's path like a thin silver line cutting through the void. A whisper, a flicker, then impact. One enemy drops. The SEALs freeze. None of them had an angle, so Leela doesn't wait for them to figure it out. Her hands move with the speed of muscle memory. Bolt back, casing out, bolt forward. She shifts 2 degrees right, holds, fires again. Second target down, she doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, doesn't breathe until the shot is gone. On the ridge below, the SEALs look at each other, white. Someone just took out 2 enemies they couldn't even see. But the real shock wasn't the kill count. It was the calmness of the shots, not desperate, not rushed. These were the rounds of someone completely in control, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. The wind picks up. Dust coils around her like smoke. Her face is smeared with dirt, a thin cut on her cheek, still bleeding from when she crawled through shale earlier. But her expression stays steady focused. If fear exists anywhere inside her, it's buried beneath layers of training, discipline, and something deeper, something personal. She whispers to herself, "Not tonight. No one else dies tonight." That moment, soft, almost inaudible, carries more weight than the gunfire. Because it hints at the truth even she I sentee ready to confront. She's not here by accident. She's not saving strangers. She's trying to save someone she lost long before this night. Below, a third enemy flanks right. The shot echoes through the canyon like a heartbeat, sharp, absolute, final. When the screen fades back in, the third insurgent's body collapses into the dust with a muted thud. But Lila is already shifting position, already recalculating, already preparing for the next threat. The camera would press in close on her hands, steady, deliberate, untouched by panic contrasting against the chaos unfolding below. The SEALs finally spot the downed targets, and shock flashes across their faces. One of them mutters under his breath, "No way. That's impossible from this distance." But it isn't impossible not for her. She has spent years in silence, perfecting the thing she was never supposed to excel at. Years spent hiding a skill that could have changed everything, if she had been allowed to use it sooner. For a moment, the wind dies. The ridge grows eerily quiet. Leela's gloved fingers tighten around her rifle. She knows what comes next. A smart enemy retreats. A bold enemy charges. But a well-trained enemy. They fan out. They disappear into the shadows. And that's exactly what these insurgents start doing. She watches their patterns through her scope, one moving behind a boulder, another setting up elevation, two more splitting wide for a pincer movement. They're disciplined, coordinated, which means they're dangerous. And she has only seconds before the SEALs below are boxed in from both sides. Her heartbeat doesn't spike, her breathing doesn't change, but the camera would catch something else, the flicker in her eyes, the one hint of memory breaking through. A sunlit training field, a younger woman laughing, a spotter's hand tapping her shoulder. A promise made, a promise broken. She blinks it away and returns to the ridge. Down below, the SEAL team leader finally gives the order. We move on, my mark, but Lila knows they won't survive a movement. Not yet. The enemy has sightlines they don't even realize. She adjusts her reticle to the far left, spotting the fourth enemy crawling into position behind a slab of cracked rock. She fires. This one isn't a clean hit. Wind turbulence knocks the round slightly off course, striking high, shattering the insurgent's shoulder instead of his heart. He screams, alerting the others. The canyon erupts with gunfire. Tracer rounds carve red arcs through the darkness. The SEALs duck, scrambling for better cover. Pinned once again, but this time the enemy knows exactly where the support fire is coming from. Leela feels it instantly. 3 rifles lift toward her ridge. 3 sets of scopes glint in the moonlight. She rolls left, barely dodging the first incoming shot. Shards of rock spray across her face. Another round slams into the ground inches from her elbow. The camera would track her low crawl through the dust, the sound of incoming fire thundering around her. She keeps her rifle close, using her forearms to drag herself toward a new position. Her breath finally quickens, not from fear, but calculation. She's been compromised. She has maybe a minute before the enemy reaches her exact location. Maybe less. And the seals, they're still boxed in below. She wipes her cheek with the back of her glove. The cut opens wider. Blood trickles down. She doesn't blink it away this time. Pain keeps her sharp. Then just for a heartbeat she hesitates, not because of the danger, but because she hears a voice in her memory, soft, familiar, guiding her through her first long-range drill. Never stay in the same spot more than 3 shots. You move, even if it feels safe. Especially if it feels safe. Her spotter, the one she lost. The reason she's on this ridge tonight. She presses her lips together. I know, she whispers. The gunfire intensifies. Dust explodes beside her. She grips the rifle, digs her elbows in, and pushes herself into a sprinting crawl toward a darker, steeper slope. But just as she reaches relative cover, she hears its footsteps. Fast ones, close ones. She freezes. The screen cuts to black. The footsteps stopped just 3 meters behind her. Heavy, controlled. Someone trained, someone closing in with the confidence of a hunter who believes the prey is already cornered. Lila presses her cheek into the cold dirt, barely daring to breathe. The camera would tighten on her, eyes wide alert, calculating, listening to those steps press deeper into the shale. Then, silence. Not the comforting kind. The kind that means the enemy is thinking. She angles her head just enough to glance through a narrow crack between 2 rocks. A shadow shifts. A silhouette rises slowly. The insurgent is scanning the ridge with the patience of a man who has hunted in these mountains his entire life. He has the advantage: elevation, visibility, aggression. Lila only has one: discipline. She waits for his foot to move. Just 1 inch. One tiny giveaway. When it does, she springs. The camera would whip with her movement, dust exploding from her boots as she rolls onto her back. Rifle already raised, she fires once, the suppressed round cracking through the dirt like a muted thunderclap. The insurgent collapses mid-step, his weapon clattering against the rocks. But she doesn't celebrate the kill. She doesn't even look at him. She's already moving. Her lungs burn, her arms scrape against the jagged stone. But she pushes lower down the ridge, disappearing into a narrow cut of terrain, barely wide enough for a single person. The wind funnels through the gap, howling like a warning. She uses that sound, juices it, to mask her movement, mask her breathing, mask her presence. Below, the seals are still fighting for their lives. Gunfire flickers in the dark like angry stars. The team has shifted position now, forming a tighter defensive circle. Their voices crackle through radio static, urgent, strained, desperate. One of them shouts, "We're pinned from both angles." Someone's got to break that flank, but Leela knows they can't. They don't have the elevation, the angles, or the timing. She does. She drops onto her stomach at the edge of a slope overlooking the left flank. 5 enemy shooters, moving like ghosts through the ridge shadows. She steadies her rifle, but her hands tremble for the first time all night. The camera would linger there, just long enough for the viewer to see it. The slightest shake, a fracture in her control. She forces it still. Her breathing falls into old rhythm. Inhale, hold, exhale, half. Hold. Her world narrows to crosshairs and heartbeat. She lines up the first target. Shot down. Second target ducks behind cover. She adjusts elevation. Shot. The bullet ricochets off stone. The enemy spins toward her position. Lila curses under her breath and rolls to the right just as 3 rounds punch into the dirt where her head was seconds before. She lands hard, pain shooting through her ribs. But there's no time to feel it. She racks the bolt manually, faster this time, harsh wrangles upward, and fires again. Hit third target, falls. The SEALs below hear the distant cracks and suddenly understand they're not alone. Someone is fighting for them. Hard, their team leader squints toward the ridge. He doesn't see her, but he sees the impacts. Controlled, timed, intentional. "Whoever you are," he mutters, "keep going." Lila pushes herself up to her elbows. Sweat and blood smear across her face. She blinks it out of her eye and searches for the next target. She finds him, but too late. The 4th enemy is already aiming at her. She dives sideways. A round grazes her shoulder, ripping through her sleeve. She winces, teeth clenched, but keeps crawling, keeps moving, refusing to stop even as more gunfire rains down from above. Then deep in the valish, she hears something that freezes her blood. A scream. Not a man's, a woman's. A memory hits her like a grenade, her spotter. The last voice she heard years ago on a different ridge, a different night, calling her name before everything went black. Her hands shake again. She forces them still. She sets her cheek against the rifle, but before she can fire, the ridge above her erupts with movement. Someone is charging straight at her. The screen cuts to black. The charging footsteps thunder down the ridge, kicking loose stones that clatter like warning bells across the dark terrain. Lila snaps her rifle up, but the silhouette is already too close to fast. The camera would swing wide, catching the blur of motion as she rolls aside at the last possible second. An enemy fighter crashes past her, skidding on the shale, spinning back with a knife drawn. His eyes are wild, desperate, knowing she's the threat who's been cutting down his entire unit. Lila scrambles backward, boots fighting for traction. He lunges, blade aimed for her throat. She traps his wrist mid-strike, the metal glinting inches from her skin. Their breath merges into one cloud in the freezing air. He's stronger, bigger, but she's faster, smarter. She drives her knee into his ribs, just enough to break his grip. The knife slips. She twists his arm, forcing his momentum downward, and slams his face into the stone. He collapses. The mountain goes quiet again, but she doesn't. She rises instantly, bruised, bleeding, focused. Because below her, the seal's situation has turned worse. A fresh wave of gunfire erupts from the lower ridge to new enemy shooters. Hidden until now, have begun pouring heavy fire toward the recon team. The valley lights up with muzzle flashes. Shouts echo through the canyon. One SEAL jerks backward, hit in the leg, dragged to cover by his teammate. They're running out of time. Lila grips her rifle so tightly her knuckles pale. She's already tired. Her shoulder burns from the graze. Her ribs ache. Her throat is dry. The smart move would be to retreat to save herself before she's overrun. But she hears that scream again. Not the one from the valley. The one from years ago. Her spotter, her best friend, calling her name the night she died in an ambush Lila couldn't stop. She failed once. She refuses to fail again. The camera would rise behind her as she sprints up a narrow cut along the ridge. Her silhouette moving like a shadow against the moonlit rock. She climbs higher, higher still, reaching a vantage point even sharper than her laster natural shelf, with full overlook of both enemy flanks. She throws herself forward, slides into prone position, and steadies her breathing. The SEALs are seconds from being overrun. She sights in shot. The first hidden shooter drops. The second one ducks, taking cover behind a jagged stone outcrop. He pops up, fires. She feels a round crack into the dirt near her hand. She ignores it, tracks his movement. Shot, miss. He's good, experienced. He shifts position constantly, never lingering long enough for a clean shot. Lila's heartbeat matches the wind, slow but forceful. She closes her eyes for one breath, just one, and imagines her spotter beside her again, whispering, "Trust the drift. Let the line settle." Her eyes open. She anticipates the shooter's next position, not where he is, but where he will be. Shot. He falls. Below, the SEALs finally break free from the encirclement. They move with renewed determination, pushing into better cover, stabilizing their wounded, reclaiming initiative. One of them looks up toward the ridge and sees a faint silhouette lying against the rocks. Who the hell is that?